Yeah.
David is a very interesting story. Also,
Nice.
we broadcast this live to LinkedIn, so if you repost it, it'll go to all your followers. You do that
Very
whenever you
cool.
want.
Awesome.
Cool. Well, welcome back to the Behind the Food podcast, everybody. Today I have David Zinn with me, who is a good friend from when I very the first part of No Baked getting into CPG. David was there, ironically, because we were on a podcast together. And then I have my co-host Daniel, as always.
What's up,
Um,
guys?
David, it's good to see you. I feel like everybody knows you because of Devash and because of everything you've done with the dates, which, by the way, I love dates, which is a recent thing. I didn't know I loved the dates until about 2 years ago. And then I was like, dates have shit tons of fiber. I need to eat more fiber. I started eating them. So now I just go to Costco and buy, the giant thing of dates. I'm that guy.
I'll send you one
Uh,
of the samples.
please. Um, But what I wanted to ask you is, I know that you had a business before Devash. It was also in the food space. So I guess we just start there. I usually ask guests like, how did you get started? But how did you get started? And how
So
old were you?
I was, wow, I was 26 when I just got started. I started my first business with my cousin Josh, and it was called Fruity's Organic Fruit Snacks. And so we actually developed a pouch, and it was, I'll never forget. It was back during the golden era of of Expo West, I guess you could say. It was really early CPG when not it wasn't as hot as it is today, and there was, I'll never forget, like, it was when just everybody that walked by your booth at Expo West was a buyer, and I remember we got our first real shot actually with Meyer, and the buyer was a great guy. He was awesome. He's like, hey, I love what you're doing. I want to give you guys a chance. And my cousin and I, we kind of were toying with the idea at this time. We only came to the show with the show cost like a lot less than it does today, but it was, we literally showed up with these pouches with water, and we had samples that we made at like a commercial kitchen, and we sticker labeled all the pouches. And it was really a game changer attending that show, because we ended up finding a co-packer. We found a lot of our suppliers. And Meyer gave us a chance. He said, hey, do you think you can have like 10,000 of these made in, the next 3 months? And we said yes, even though we weren't sure if we'd be able to do it. And, we had a lot of success with that business. And, but unfortunately, at the end of the day, we had a co-packer that we were aligned with, and they ended up going out of business, and we find another facility that could help us produce the product profitably. And so that was when my best friend Brian, he's from Chicago, by the way. I'm from Cleveland, and so I know we have the Ohio connection, Jimmy. But
Cleveland's great. It's a great
but
place for the whole family.
the best people are from the Midwest. I'm not sure, Daniel, where you're from, but it's Midwest breeds good people.
Yeah,
And
my parents are from Illinois, Chicago, so yeah,
oh, there
I'm
you
with you
go.
there.
See?
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. So, good people. And
yeah.
so when Fuji's was in the process of winding down, my best friend Brian, he said, he's like, I have an idea that we should give a try. And he mentioned date syrup. And I was like, interesting. I was like, I've never heard of it. I'd love to try it. And so, he sent me some samples. And, out of the gate, I think the biggest things that we really focused on were finding like a key core supplier partner who we knew would never go out of business, and also being profitable from day one. And, I think that those were really two key things that I took away from my first little foray into CPG.
I was going to ask you about that. Like, I've met a couple people now that have had like kind of like a first act, if you will. Like, it's like, how long did you guys run that business? Was it for like 5 years?
We ran it for, we ran it for 4 years. And
Yeah, a long time.
a long time. And, we had a lot of big wins. Like, we had multiple Costco, rotations. It could have been something. I think part of it is, I think the old saying is, if only I had the knowledge I had today, if I could go back in time and tell my old self, what I would do differently, there's certainly a lot that I would have done differently. And I think it's what a lot of founders realize too. It's, you really have to have multiple ways to win. And I think that's where Devash has really shined. Where Devash is an old school, we joke it's a keep it simple, stupid business. We only focus on profit. We only do a deal if it makes sense. We, we focus on obviously having the best quality products. Our partners are amazing. We have incredible partners, and we want to become like the premier date company. We want to be the go-to guys, the date guys, for lack of a better word, that everybody goes to if they need any type of date product. And with Fuji's, we only had one real way to win, and that was like retail. And we sold to a couple corporate accounts, like we sold to Google. I remember to the Google campus, which was pretty cool. But with Devash, what really makes it unique is, you can sell the same product multiple ways. So I can sell date syrup in a bottle to Whole Foods, Sprouts, Walmart, Costco, etc. I can sell a bulk, I can sell a pail of date syrup to a small business. I can sell a tote, a 2,500 pound tote or a 617 pound drum, to a co-packer or to a large, company that's using dates as an ingredient. And so we realized that we could develop, multiple revenue streams that really allow the business to be profitable so we can continue growing healthy, and not constantly needing to raise money, where I think a lot of brands get trapped and it's not sustainable long term. I think you need to, you need to focus on profit today more than ever. And there's some great ways that you can do that naturally and organically. And, I think wholesale food service is tremendous. I think retail is obviously great, but you just have to make sure that that you're prepared for, for lack of a better word, the chaos of working with the distributors. It's
Like you got the chaos.
Yeah.
You started with like, I'm not sure what I'm going to say here, and then you got the chaos, which honestly is a really good description.
It's a necessary evil, I would say. It's unfortunate, but it's true in a lot of cases. I think you can only grow if you use the big distributors, but we love working with small local distributors. We found some great local distributor partners, like Renaissance and Gourmet in California. We've had some, difficult times down the road with, other large distributors, especially with the chargebacks. And, it was really hard as a small brand initially to be able to grow. And that's when we really realized, okay, like we need a plan here that we stick to. Like there were certain retailers that we worked with where, we realized after the EDLP, we were losing money, and we just could not move forward with that moving forward. And so we really took a step back and said, okay, let's focus on a partnership that works best for everybody. We obviously want the retailers to make money. We want the distributors to make money, but us as a small growing brand, we need to be able to make money too in order to become a larger company. And it's, I think like that was the biggest thing, about 3-4 years ago with Devash, we made that change and we said, okay, we're going to focus on, developing a strategy that has multiple ways to win, where, we're industry agnostic to an extent. We can sell to wholesale, sell to food service, sell to retail, sell to corporate accounts, sell B2B, sell D2C, and it's like you kind of need to develop that strategy in order to be able to survive. And, you have some monsters out there that are really incredible that I respect so much, who've been able to build these incredible businesses that, they dominate in retail, they dominate in, D2C, but, in order to do that profitably, it's really, really hard. And I think, for us, we have a great product and dates are definitely having a moment, but, I think the other thing that we really had to realize is if you're going to win in retail, you need to have a product that has high velocity. So, like date syrup and date sugar, it's great, but your average individual is not buying, cases of it on a weekly basis. And so that's where if you look at like restaurants, you look at wholesale food service, they're buying such massive large quantities that it's a game changer.
What kind of restaurants are you guys selling date syrup to?
I mean, you'd be surprised at so many use restaurants today, or so many restaurants today will, instead of honey or instead of maple syrup, they're looking for something a little more diverse and interesting to be able to offer their customer base. And I would say that's our biggest, I'd say that's been one of our biggest competitive advantages. But yeah, we work with, like Gordon Food Service, work with Cisco Foods. It's been really great. And, we work with a lot of like bakeries, things along those lines. Like we're starting to work with, we're really excited about it, but Salt and Straw, if you guys are familiar with the ice cream company, they're really
That's
big.
really exciting.
Yeah. And, we worked with Phil's Coffee, we worked with Blue Bottle.
Wow.
It's pretty amazing. I mean, there's like anybody who uses a sweetener could use this because it is much healthier. It's lower glycemic. It's from, repurposed produce to reduce the food waste, and it tastes really good. So it kind of checks a lot of boxes, especially when you're comparing it to something like maple syrup, which is amazing and is delicious, but it's also very expensive.
Yeah, I was curious about, you were mentioning these multiple diverse revenue streams you've got, which, I'm I'm very bullish on wholesale food service. That's kind of the path I'm kind of taking with empanadas. There's a lot of growth opportunity there. So I think more CPG needs to do wholesale food service like you've done. Out of all these different, diversified revenue streams you've created, is wholesale food service the most profitable for you? I'm kind of curious on that because for me, it's been really profitable.
It's, I would say, retail right now is probably our most profitable,
Really?
actually.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
surprising.
Because retail, I'll tell you, food service, it's tough. I mean, because we're more of like a commodity selling it as an ingredient, we don't have the, it becomes a pricing game. Like, does my spec sheet match what you're using? Does my sample match what you're using? And then it's okay, like it's easier in a lot of ways because I know if that person's already using dates as an ingredient, then I have an opportunity to get my foot in the door. But what's really going to have them give me a chance? I mean, look, I hope they like my personality and want to work with me. But at the end of the day, it's price. And so we don't have, I guess you could say yes, we can, command a solid price or a strong price because of our quality. But at the end of the day, we're already going up against something that they're already using, like a base. And so a lot of the times people do try to squeeze us on price. And, I would say what I love about it is there's no surprises and there's no marketing costs. It's, they buy it for X, we sell it for Y, and there's no chargeback, there's no deduction, there's no, it's like, oh, well, I got this massive, $1,000 PO from, a distributor, and then it's, wait a second, why am I only getting, $100,000? Where's the rest of it? And it's like there's no free fills, there's no, surprises there. And so I think, what I tell even a lot of my friends in this space, and look, it obviously takes manpower, it takes energy, it takes time. But if you are buying a lot of a single ingredient, why don't you try and create a little co-op-esque type of model where even you buy it in bulk and you sell it to other companies. Like if they're paying X, you give them a better price, and then increase your overall margin. I think there's a lot of ways you can get creative, but it takes time, it takes execution. It certainly adds another layer in terms of, from a supply chain standpoint. But I think it's really worthwhile, and a lot of people should look into it, if you want to get off the hamster wheel of constantly needing to raise money.
Yeah, that hamster wheel is rough, man. And I wanted to ask you this earlier, and we go back to it. When you guys started your original brands and when you started Devash, did you raise money for either of them?
Yeah, we did. So we raised money for both. I mean, look, you have to. There's no way unless, unless you were like a founder before, you could self-fund, which we weren't in the position to do.
Yeah.
You have to do it. And, thankfully we have great partners who've supported us, and, we've been really blessed on that side of things. And, now we have the business in a really strong, healthy spot, which we're really proud of. And look, it took a long time to get there. It's like everybody says, your overnight success, it certainly did not take us overnight, and we still have a long way to go. But we're on a really great path. But it took us, I'd say a solid, 5 years to figure it out. And, it was constantly pivoting. It was figuring out, if something didn't work, cut it quick, and try something else. I also think a lot of brands get too caught up on the marketing side of things. Unless you raise a ton of money, one of our, one of our advisors and investors, he actually gave the best analogy I've ever heard. And he said, you have to look at your business as you're in a desert. And even if you raised a couple $1,000,000, you have to look at that money as your water while you're in the desert. And if you go trying to plant a bunch of trees in the desert with your water, you're going to end up with no trees and you're going to end up with no water. And I was like, wow, it hits, especially because, we sell dates, and, they're grown in the desert. But it really it kind of was like our like epiphany moment. We're like, okay, we get this. We were really okay. Like, look, we don't know what the future has in store, but what we really wanted to build was, Brian, my business partner, he's my best friend, and, we really wanted to build a business for our families. And, if we get to give the investors dividends, forever, and, don't have that exit, we're okay with it. We're very happy with building a family business that, we can do forever. It's a lot of fun when you get to work with your best friend, and, there's certainly good days and bad days, but when you've got that person, when you got your partner with you who you can lean on during the rough times, it definitely makes it easier. But, I think a lot of brands really need to look at it as, what can get me to profitability the quickest? And that's the path that I wish I took sooner, as opposed to going after, the massive retail accounts, the massive distributor accounts. It's really, it's like you're fishing. You got to throw many lines in the water and see what you catch. And, whatever is going to allow you to be the most sustainable, that's, I think, the direction that you have to put some energy in.
It's so interesting listening to you tell the story and like talk about like first like the challenges that you guys faced, and then like kind of the epiphany, which is like, hey, we need to focus on profit. We can't just like grow at random. Like you said, like if you're in the desert, you have so much water, you can't just like run around doing crazy shit 24/7. The thing that's so interesting about it for me though is like that is kind of the journey that I also went on. It took me a long time to like come around to, but similar to you, like, yeah, I wish I could have told myself that like 5 years ago, but I didn't. Like, I think it may be something that I needed to learn like on my own. Maybe it's something you needed to learn on your own. Maybe someone who listens to this podcast will just take our advice at
I hope so.
face value.
Don't
yeah,
light
focusing on
venture funds on fire. Be profitable.
well, yeah, and just don't like overextend yourself. I mean, we and not just me, but I think a lot of brands like they see the shiny object and they're like, oh my gosh, like Publix wants to bring on our product and they're gonna take it to all 1,400 stores, and this brand is in like 300 doors or whatever it is today, and it's like, oh, you're gonna 5x like your store count, awesome. But like, what are you going to do with it? Like, how are you going to support it? Or what does that mean? What does even just the free fill mean? If you're going to free fill them 2 cases per store, like how much is that going to cost you? Did you think about it first, or were you just like, let's go? And I think so often people are just like, let's go. And then you see brands constantly come and go. I mean, you've been in this space for a very long time. If you go to Expo every 5 years, you'll see completely different setup of brands. And most of them falling victim to like the shiny object syndrome, or they just ran out of money because there was no path to profitability. Speaking of that, when you think about profitability and like you guys think about your business, it seems like you guys are very thoughtful about, we're going to do deals that are good for us, that make sense for the business. This is a good thing to do long term. How does pricing strategy play into that for you guys? Because I feel like a lot of people look at things on the shelf that are near them and they're like, okay, I have to make sure I'm going to move. Instead, do you guys kind of start from like the COGS model and say like, let's make sure we have good unit economics before we move forward? And if someone doesn't like the price, then they just won't buy it.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're spot on. I mean, that was a big thing for us where, in the beginning, and I think, it's still a fairly nascent category, the date sector as a whole, but, education is really big and it's really expensive. And I think that, people as the years have gone on have become more and more familiar with dates, and we're now having conversations with, people that when we reached out to them 5 years ago, I just don't think they were aware of all the health benefits. But we're willing to like, look, you have to pay to play in many opportunities, but we weigh the opportunity. We say, okay, do we really think our product is going to do well at the specific account? If we do, then we're willing to give it a shot. We discuss it. But there are many times where we say, you know what, I don't know if this is the right fit. I don't know if it's worth taking the risk here right now if we're going to lose X. If we can break even on it, great. Simple rules of economics. If you can break even, you take it all day. But I think that that's really the biggest thing that we really focus on today is, does it make sense? And are we not going to lose our shirt on this deal? Look, we've had like customer service is everything in today too. Like on the food service side, we've had times where, we've gone out of stock and, for like date sugar or date syrup or date paste. And, we had a client who, needed something quickly. And so we'll rush order it, and everything we use, we import, and so it takes a long time to get to the US. And, the tariffs are a whole nother,
That was what I was going to ask about.
yeah, that was a whole nother thing. But, we keep getting curveballs. But no, there were times where we like had to rush order product in order to make sure that our customer didn't go out of stock, because we've been there on the other side of the table when, because of, when there were some co-packers that we worked with in the beginning who, delayed our run, and that caused huge issues for us and burned some relationships with retailers. And then we had to go back and, we really had to like plead for another opportunity. And it's tough when you're a brand, when, you don't have control over your supply chain and you're not vertically integrated, and, you're depending on a co-packer. And, if you don't produce your goods and then the retailer loses out on shelf space, it's hard. It's like, it is your responsibility, but there's so much you can control too. And so, we've been on the opposite side of that where we say, you know what, we want to get the product here as soon as possible. We don't want, our customers to go out of stock, and, we'd even sell it for break even or even for a loss a couple times, because it's on us. Like we need to make sure that, they can sustain their business appropriately.
Yeah, that's a hard thing to get new entrepreneurs to understand, is that you don't always make money, even if your model is built to. Sometimes the world happens and you just have to, or life happens and you just have to eat it. And you do it because it maintains the relationship, it maintains your level of service, and it maintains your market share. And you just take the loss on the chin and move on to the next order. That's all you can do.
Yeah, a lot of it, like we're big on being true to our word, and it's relationships are everything, and we want to be known as a dependable company, and we pride ourselves on that. And like it's we're never going to compromise quality, we're never going to compromise our product, and we always do our best to make sure we have what everybody needs in stock.
And I was curious on the import side, do you guys manufacture the product here and import the raw material, or are you actually manufacturing the whole product overseas and importing the finished thing?
Yeah, so we're very blessed. Our partners are in Dubai, and they've been incredible. Barca, and it's funny, we met them. It was we were working with a date supplier in the U.S. initially when we started the business, and every year they would raise our prices. And we were like, man, this is crazy. Like our margins are quickly going to zero. We have to pivot. And so Brian and I just started shooting off emails to random date companies all over the world. And we really hit it off with Abarca. And it started off as just as us being, purchasing from them, being customers. And then it grew into a beautiful partnership. And we now manufacture everything with them. So we do, date syrup, date sugar. We're launching a line of fiber bars, which we're really excited about. Fiber is really in, but shipping. I mean, our lead times are about 12 to 14 weeks. So we really have to, make sure that we have everything locked down from a projection standpoint. It's tough because, I'm not sure if you guys saw in the news, but there was a while, where the Houthis were, causing some chaos, and we had to then pivot and start shipping around the Horn of Africa, which led to an additional 2 to 3 weeks of shipping time and cost. The longer your product is on the water, the more money you have to pay. So, fortunately, it seems that has died down. But yeah, it was really, really tough. And, same thing, like our duty, like our tariffs, they went from 5% to 10%. And, that 5% is, coming out of our margin. And so, I think it's really tough, if, when you didn't necessarily anticipate that change when you built out your projections the prior year. And so, it's tough. And also it's like, you agree on a lot of, when you contract, product, especially on the food service side, you can't just go and change your price halfway through the year. It's, you have to be true to your word. And so, I think that was definitely a surprise that a lot of us didn't realize. And same thing on the retail side. We tried to increase our price to a couple of retailers, and they basically said, nope, we're not gonna take it. And so, look, I get it where everybody's coming from, but it's hard. It's really, really tough. But look, you get through it, you figure it out, and it just means we have to sell more date products. So
nothing wrong with that.
Exactly.
No, and it's definitely like unforeseen stuff like that is kind of just par for the course. It's like no matter how long or how short you do something, there will always be some sort of thing that comes up that you simply can't control, and you should kind of just have to deal with it. And there's nothing to do, which sucks, but it is what it is.
You always have to pivot. I mean, there's no cookie cutter formula or process that guarantees success. And I think that that's also something else. It's, the people that did it, 20 years ago, 10 years ago, it's constantly changing. I feel like there's I feel like every 3 to 5 years even, and it's probably just going to get, change, even faster and faster. But, the ways to win, I think, really do change. It's not the same as it used to be. I mean, I think it used to be, I think the old school model with brokers and, even now, like you have some in-person meetings, which obviously I appreciate and I enjoy, but, most meetings now are over Zoom. It's very different than how it was in the early days. And, I think that, there's pros and cons to both is what I would probably.
Yeah, and I mean, like, dude, when you go down that line of thinking, like just the fact that like the world changes, it's beginning to change faster and faster, like, it's cycling faster. You want to like describe it like that? You kind of, as an entrepreneur, just end up locking yourself into a job description of I'm just gonna like learn really quickly because the stuff that I've already learned is probably no longer useful in a few years. Like when we started No Baked, which I think was the same, it started in 2017. So like 2017 is a very different time than 2026. And when we started, we were a restaurant chain. We weren't a CPG brand, but it's like all of our social media and all the promotion we did was primarily centered around like Facebook and then Instagram. Like
Yeah.
Instagram was great for food, but like we used Facebook events to do all kinds of promotion. Like the really interesting strategy that no longer applies to anything, just in a little
Right.
small. And it's like you can have these things that worked so well for you, or maybe so well for like an advisor of your brand, but like that was in like 2005. And it's
Hmm.
like, well, what from 2005 still applies today? It's like, well, selling a product profitably probably still applies. The
Hmm.
rest of it, like in marketing and like sales and like the way that things like go back and forth, like those have all changed. And they consistently continue to change. And we kind of have no control over it other than to say, like, I guess I'll learn what we're doing now. Like, what are we doing today, guys? Like, this is gonna be different.
No, it's true. But I mean, there are a lot of opportunities. I'd say like that's the biggest thing is you really have to, be open-minded and I'd say look for those opportunities because they're certainly there. Um, I was just talking to a friend the other day, and one of the areas that he really specializes and focuses on is corporate accounts. And corporate accounts are great, especially like the Metas and the Googles of the world. Like we sell some of our bars to Meta. And he was saying how corporate accounts are amazing because, it's basically retail, but without the marketing spend. And the difficult thing is getting your foot in the door. And, you got to knock on that door, who knows, for months, maybe even a couple years. But, if you're really able to develop a relationship around that, you can do very, very well. And, same thing, like a lot of people don't look at, anybody that has snacks or foods, if you're able to build something around like, assisted living facilities, schools, developing a healthier, better product, hospitals, those are all great areas that I think people tend to overlook. There's a lot of people when they jump into this, they think retail, retail, retail. And it's like, yes, retail is awesome. That's, the sexy place to be where everybody wants to be in. But there are really a lot of, you know, there's a lot of adjacent areas that I think people could really grow their brand, if they start to really do their research.
Makes
Definitely.
a ton of sense.
I have a question for you about product mix. So your
Yeah.
hero product is obviously the syrup, right? And then I'm guessing right next to that is the sugar, right? After that, paste, probably.
Yeah, paste we sell only wholesale food service. We don't sell
Hmm.
it in retail yet, but then I mean the bars are really going to be,
Yeah, I was
hopefully.
interested about that. Is this a new product you're launching, or is this out there?
So we have a fiber bar out there right now. It's at Whole Foods and CVS, and so we're actually really excited because we're launching an improved fiber bar, I guess you could say, that's going to have protein and fiber in it. We found that that was really what people were looking for, and look, I think that's a big thing too. Is you always need to improve, reiterate when needed. But we found that, today the average American is not getting enough fiber into their diet. And I think obviously being a date company, we're really lucky because dates are a natural,
Dates are
fiber
the
rich
greatest way
food.
to get fiber.
It's,
It's the
yeah,
best,
they
the
are.
best way.
It's the greatest way. And so we really realized, well, what are the two things that everybody's looking for today? Protein and fiber. And so if we could really do that well, which I think our team did, I think it'll be a smashing success. I mean, with that being said, you have to go into it eyes wide open. The bar category is very saturated. Lots and lots of competition. I mean, like the great thing about like the date syrup and the date sugar is, we're definitely the big dog when it comes to retail with those products. And they're amazing products, and we hope that more and more people continue and start to use them. But what we really believe is, if we're really able to have a bar that kind of resonates with everyone's needs, as long as it tastes really, really good and the pricing is right, we think it'll be very, very successful. And, hopefully we can really double down on, D2C and subscription, and, the bars are pretty light, not too heavy to ship. But also, hopefully it is something that will have that high velocity, that we can kind of sell everywhere. And, where we really got that idea from was we were doing a couple of Gordon food service shows, and there were all these assisted living facilities that said, hey, this is a great product. would you ever consider adding more protein there? And, or, in your bar. And I was like, yeah, you know what, Brian and I have talked about that. We should really go back and look at it. And, we kind of launched a product, heard what the market was looking for, what it needed, made a lot of sense. We work with an amazing, food scientist through our team. Her name's Rupali. She's been excellent. And, she's really helped us develop, some amazing products. And so, look, hopefully everybody else will think the same, and, we'll see where it goes. I'll definitely keep you guys posted and send you samples. But I think that's a big thing, is creating products around what, the world is looking for today is another big thing. And, listening to people's feedback and making those necessary tweaks along the line. And so, we're really excited for that. So we'll see how, I think I'm very, I feel very good about it. I'm really excited to release it. And, hopefully everybody else will feel the same.
Yeah. I'll say one thing here. So I noticed that kind of the market came to you. This was kind of similar to my story, right? So you were in dates, high fiber. All of a sudden the world figured out, hey, we need more fiber, right? But you were kind of ahead of that. I was kind of in a similar space with empanadas, which was everything gluten-free and vegan. And for several years, we were putting her along being, just this Colombian-centric empanada brand. But then the world figured out, oh, we need more gluten-free products. And then it steered in our direction, right? So I feel like with dates, you're kind of in the same boat where it's like, hey, we've been high fiber for a long time, and then the world kind of turned in your direction. Yeah.
Yeah, that, it's important to listen. And, a lot of, that was also something, like, originally when we got started, we kind of thought, okay, the way to success is, you have to constantly launch new products. If you have a ton of products, then, you will be able to generate a ton of revenue. But, the most important thing is, are your products selling, and how quickly are they selling? And, another thing that, that is also tough today is because the world, yes, it's a very big place, but it's also become very small, relatively speaking, where you can buy products from anywhere today, which is really amazing, but it's also made it that much more competitive. And so, you might have your customers that are buying your product today, but you have to constantly keep them engaged and interested and involved. And, you really need to listen to them and build new products around what they want. Focus on your base. And, yes, it's great to get new customers, but, you got to keep the people happy who already enjoy your product.
I really love the way you're thinking about this, but also because, like, I've talked to several veteran, like, CPG founders like yourself, where there's two things happening at the same time, and they both can be true. The first one is similar to what you were just saying, which is we continue to stay true to ourselves and our original customers. We're going to make stuff that they like. We're going to listen to them. We're going to have, like, a relationship. And then at the same time, hey, look, the trend is coming our way. Like, yippity doo dah, this is amazing. I talked to Jason Burke, like, or me and Daniel did. We talked to Jason a while ago. And when Jason started New Primal, like, meat snacks were super hot. And then they weren't hot at all. And nobody wanted them. And then suddenly now in the last, like, couple of years, like, they're hot again. And it's like, well, he's been doing this since, like, 2011. Like, he was bound to hit a trend eventually, right? Like, people were bound to eventually be like, David, you make fiber? Oh my gosh. And then, like, freak out. And they want your, like, dates. But the whole time it's like, no, I was just, like, I was staying very focused on, like, what we're trying to build, and knowing that, like, the market will come to it at some point if it's good.
Yeah.
And then at the same time, complete opposite of that is, like, I am listening to my core customers, and I'm actually making new products that they want. I'm not going to trend follow, but I'm going to follow that audience. And that feels like incredible advice. It's like you're making a product for a certain group of people. Can't be everything to everyone, but
Yeah,
you for sure can be something to your audience.
You can't win over everybody, and that's just the way of life. People have different tastes, but if you can win over a solid majority, and if you can really become a staple, that's where I think you really develop something. And so, for us, it was, I think the stars are really starting to align. And look, it's taken a long time to get here, but the stars are really starting to align in terms of that people are becoming more aware of, their diets. They're becoming more aware of health and wellness. And, another thing, is, I mean, especially now that you have a lot of people that are on like the GLP-1s, like Ozempic, like more and more people are going to need fiber in their diets. And I remember, just talking with some friends who, they said that, they would go to like a GI and the GI said, yeah, like you need more fiber. It was like, you constantly heard this, from people who are, in their like late 20s, early 30s. And then, my grandmother who was, 100 years old, it was like they had the same issues. And, I think that now that people are more aware of what they need in order to be healthy, it's definitely been a huge benefit for us. And, look, it's one of those things. I hope it stays. And I believe it will. I think that people will only eat and, consume more dates as time goes on. But look, there are still, I have a lot of friends from Cleveland who, they didn't even know what a date was until I gave them one to try. And so, there's still, we have a lot of education that still needs to be done. But that's what makes it exciting too.
Yeah, that is true. It's like the more you like live on like in the coast bubble, the more you hear like the health trends like 10 years before it's like mainstream. I have hope though, because my dad, who still lives back up in Northeast Ohio, is real big into this stuff now. And I'm like,
yeah,
dude, he's like, he's older. He's taking way better care of himself now, like via food.
100%.
And I'm like, if guys like that can like kind of come around to like understand, whether it be like through podcasts or through just general like public knowledge or whatever it is, that's a good thing. Like honestly,
Absolutely.
and like people probably have needed. It's funny how protein became like this big thing for so long. Protein is good. It's definitely necessary if you're on GLP-1, like super necessary. But people, for the most part, I think consume probably enough protein. Protein is very trendy, so people are like, I'm going to go look for it in every snack on earth. I think
Right.
that is more of a trend. When I look at fiber, fiber's not sexy. Fiber is trending because people are like, please eat more fiber if they're like a health person. If you're a health influencer or a fitness influencer, you're like, guys, like you eat 200 grams of protein a day and you eat 3 grams of fiber.
Right.
And then you complain about stomach problems.
Right.
It's like, guys, you should probably eat more of it because it'll make you feel better. Yeah, I'm all in on that. Like that's the one thing where I'm like, probably similar to the way you feel. Like people will probably eat more dates over time. That feels like the line from this podcast. That's what you have to take away from it.
Yeah. I know you had a hard stop today, so before we wrap, we just wanted to ask you, where can people find Devash? Where should they look for you?
Yeah, I mean, we're, I would say you can find us in, Sprouts, Meijer, Safeway, Whole Foods, and obviously Amazon and our website.
Nice. Can you give them that website just so they know?
Sure. It's www.devashorganics.com.
Fantastic.
Sweet. Thanks, David, for coming on. We're probably going to have you back at some point.
I would love that.
Yes.
But thank you guys so much. This is really great. I really enjoyed this and really appreciate you guys taking the time and inviting me on as well. It really means a lot. And definitely look forward to continuing the conversation and would love to be on again in the future too.
Absolutely.
For sure, man. I mean, like, I think founders like yourself are like the best part of doing this podcast because I can have people on who are creating success in ways that aren't like, yeah, we built Poppy and we sold it for $2 billion. And that's what you have to do too. You have to start in Whole Foods and then you do this, this, and this, and everything will be fine. It's like, that's not what happens.
No.
There are like 1,000 different ways to skin the cat. And I want people to know all the other 999 that aren't that. And it's like, that's why there's so much value in this. Cool. Well, everyone, thanks for joining us. You can check David's stuff out on LinkedIn, or you can, go to his website, follow him on Instagram, whatever you guys have to do. Go buy his date syrup. I'm going to go do that. Cool. All right. Talk to you guys later.
Peace.
Thank you, guys.